finally get a look at Carnage in Sony's Spider-Man universe. So where are we with the updates to Returnal? And I've got my review of Jupiter's Legacy. All that and the latest and everything cool today in the Rundown. Hello, welcome inside the Electric Playground. My name is Victor Lucas, and I am delighted that you could join us for the Rundown, which is brought to you by the Gaming Stadium. They are Canada's leader in online esports tournament facilitation. They've got tournaments going on every weekend, and you don't want to miss out on this action. You can join up with them at tgs.gg. All right, today's episode is dedicated to Niles Nemo, who said, "Finally, Tony Hawk on the Switch. I have it for the Xbox, but to have it on the go is what I've been wanting." So there you go, not too long of a wait, and you'll be playing Tony Hawk on the go. Sounds pretty good to me. All right, let's get started with your rundown. Sony Pictures dropped the trailer for Venom 2, Let There Be Carnage today, which once again stars Tom Hardy as Eddie Brock, dealing with this superhuman symbiote that's attached itself to him. The trailer is definitely playing with a lighthearted nuttiness where we see Tom Hardy kind of going insane by Venom inside of his body, always constantly trying to reveal itself to other people, trying to create massive plates of snacks for it to eat. And so Tom Hardy's always got there's this physical comedy that I really dig about that. Tom Hardy's trying to tamp it down and not have Venom erupt. I'm also a big fan of Woody Harrelson. He generally does a really nice job in whatever role he's given, so I can't wait to see him as Cletus Cassidy, who then, of course, becomes Carnage in the movie. And we only get a little glimpse of Carnage, and it looks, like the red version of what we see out of Venom, which I think has always been kind of par for the course, but obviously he's got some unique powers with his symbiote alien kind of juice that's flowing through him. Both Carnage and Venom just look like malleable, squishy, monstrous beings, and it should be fun to watch them kind of go toe-to-toe because, as we know, Venom becomes a bit of an anti-hero, somebody that is kind of forced to do some good, chomp on some bad guys if he has to. Looks like there's going to be some pretty cool effects in the film and a nice comedic touch in some points. So I'm looking forward to this. I'm also looking forward to seeing what J.K. Simmons is doing back as J. Jonah Jameson in Venom 2, which Sony is saying is going to be only out in theaters on September 24th. So they are taking the big gamble that all of the pandemic stuff is going to be figured out by that point, and people want to rush into movie theaters and see this crazy film. The first Venom was a big smash success for Sony Pictures, and it is helping to kind of extend out the rights to the Spider-Man universe that they have. Eventually, we're going to see Tom Holland's Spider-Man up against Venom and possibly Carnage. There's certainly lots of weird crossovers and interesting connections, especially when you tie in all of the MCU stuff that's happening and multiverse that Marvel is crafting right now, this kind of cinematic shotgun blast of all of these different ways in. But Venom 2 actually looks like it's going to be fun, especially if you were as pleasantly surprised by the first film as I was. I didn't love it. The first one wasn't as good as the Tom Holland movies by any stretch of the imagination, but it was more fun than I was expecting. And honestly, now I'm expecting Venom 2 to level it up. But let me know, what did you think? Are you excited for what's coming down the pipeline here for Venom, Let There Be Carnage? Let me know in the comments below. All right, now let's switch our focus over to Sony's Returnal for the PlayStation 5. Housemarque's Returnal is unquestionably one of the best games of 2021 so far, with a satisfying complexity, a wonderfully mysterious story, and the perfect balance of arcade twitch precision and risk-reward strategy. But the game has launched with some issues. Housemarque, to their credit, have been doing their best to keep up with patches and stamp out post-launch bugs, but that has meant that people have had to grapple with on-the-fly progression wipes. Last week, Housemarque dropped the 1.3.3 patch, and if players had auto-update on their console and possibly had the game in rest mode, this meant that their progression could possibly have been wiped, and this happened to a lot of people, including our own Jose Sanchez, who had to basically start the game over again. Housemarque did follow up quickly with a 1.3.4 update, which allowed you to carry on from your progression, so they took down 1.3.3 as quickly as possible, popped out a 1.3.4 patch, and said that you could continue on with your progress. And then more recently, they've got a 1.3.6 patch in there, but they're constantly tweaking and tuning everything. One of the things that they adjusted for this most recent patch is that you don't heal yourself when you go to sleep inside of your Helios spacecraft. It's live, right? It's out there in the wild, and it's being played and tested, and Housemarque is able to kind of churn on that data and see exactly how players are responding to the little sort of tweaks that they are making. Not in real time. It's not like a free-to-play mobile game or anything like that, but this is a game that is being finessed for sure. But it's also a game that I think could really benefit from a full-on save mechanic that's built into the game. So you can save it, close the game, and not worry about wiping out your progression. This is a game that's meant to be played over and over again. And the good news is for people that did have their progress wiped, which sucks. I mean, if you'd gotten far into a run and you'd collected all kinds of great augments and artifacts and abilities, and then you put it on rest, and then you went back to it and you saw that everything had been dipped right back down to zero, it would be frustrating. But there's a couple things here. The game is meant to be replayed and replayed and replayed. And I've found that as many runs as I have taken, I love it as much today as I did the first time I was exposed to everything. Yes, there's a familiarity, and I'm starting to understand the geography, even though we're shifting rooms around as you continue into your run. It's just so fun to play. It's just so tuned and balanced and wonderfully stimulating. It's just like a classic arcade game. It's fun to play those early levels over and over again. That's not an excuse, though, because there really shouldn't be any progression wipes, but the silver lining is that the game at its core is just enjoyable to jump back into. That's how it was designed. And the other thing that Housemarque did suggest at the time is that you might have had a save backup that you could reinstall into your Returnal game. And sort of carry on from there, because they didn't have that 1.3.3 update up there that long. They saw they made a mistake and they took it down as quickly as possible. They responded quickly on Twitter. But I don't think they're done. I think that it's still being tuned. It's still being worked on. I know that lots of friends out there that I have in the community have finished the game, but it is truly a remarkable experience. I haven't finished it. It gets incredibly hard, but I still love playing it every time I jump back into it. So it's wonderful. What I would do is follow Housemarque on Twitter. They're pretty good at responding to feedback and giving you notifications right away. I know that there's some people out there that have probably been a little bit nervous to dive back into the game because they have had their progression wiped. And I'm sorry for you if that is the case, but Housemarque has been addressing all that. But know that they're not done tweaking this game, and I suspect we're going to be playing and talking about Returnal for a long time to come. All right, now I wanted to dive into one of my favorite topics, superhero television shows. On Friday, Netflix dropped the first season of Jupiter's Legacy. Mark Millar and Frank Quitely's comic series was the first Miller World project greenlit by Netflix after the massive deal that Mark Millar and Netflix put together, and they're calling this first season Volume 1, which is quite fitting because the show definitely has a very comic booky feel to it. It doesn't shy away from that. The characters wear bright, colorful costumes, headed up by Josh Duhamel as the Utopian, and we see all kinds of great powers and great abilities. And what this first season really is about, it's the origin tale of a group of 6 super beings that kind of manifest this new superheroic reality. And what happens is, as these regular humans become superpowered individuals, they pass on genetically through their bloodlines powers to their family members. And so we see this kind of age of heroes erupt, and hence the legacy part of the title of this work. We see it sort of pass on from generation to generation, and that brings all kinds of weird quirks and foibles to the relationships that some of the kids have with the parents. And what's also very interesting about this show is that the heroes, after they get these powers, are able to exist for many, many more decades than just a regular human being would. And so the flashback sequences take us back to the 1930s. And so this is a show that sort of combines a period drama with some really dark elements around the Great Depression and what that meant for individuals and corporations as the stock market cratered, and all kinds of people having to deal with those ramifications. And then all of a sudden these superheroes kind of erupt out of that and start to change the course of the world for the better. And at least from Utopian's vantage point, which is kind of where the camera and the storytelling is positioned for big chunks of it. Although we do spend a lot of time with the Utopian's children, and we also get to know some of the other side characters as well. This is a crowded field. There's lots of great superhero television content out there. I love The Boys. I think that's one of the strongest of the superhero shows out there. I just came off raving about the first season of Invincible, which I think is superior to this. But Jupiter's Legacy, I think, still carves out a nice position for itself. You know, it's kind of in the middle between a lot of the too many episodes of the CW shows that we get. I really like the CW shows, but it's like we get so many episodes per season that it kind of just washes over you. And then we get the sort of shorter run shows like The Boys and Invincible. Those two shows in particular, I think, are crafted a little bit better than Jupiter's Legacy. And I also would put in shows like Daredevil, the shorter run shows like Daredevil and The Punisher. Those have been really phenomenal. Not to mention the MCU shows, which have premiered this year as well. And so Jupiter's Legacy, I think, sort of sits in the middle of all that. It's not groundbreaking. It's not showcasing storytelling that we haven't seen done better in the superhero verse. But what's unique about it is that we have this great juxtaposition of these modern dramatic moments of, you know, superpowered supermodels throwing cars, and the son of Utopian who just does not feel he will ever live up to the expectations placed upon him. And everybody's trying to grapple with this code, these ethics that the Utopian has placed upon all of these superheroes. They're basically not allowed to kill, and the villains and the enemies of these heroes are starting to ratchet up their violence. And so a lot of heroes die throughout this first season. Maybe not as gruesomely as we have seen in some of the other shows out there, but still some pretty shocking moments. But really what we dive into is the family struggle and this incredibly interesting look back in time. You know, we don't see a lot of period superhero stuff. And I think that's where Jupiter's Legacy kind of stands apart. I'm also impressed by the performances. I think the cast is really strong. There's a lot of people that you've seen float in and out of projects and stuff, but there's not like massive headliners. Leslie Bibb is in there. She's a little bit underutilized because we've seen her pop up in lots of good things over the years. And Josh Duhamel is probably the most famous actor there. But I think Ben Daniels does a great job as Brainwave, as the Utopian's brother, who just doesn't feel like he has the golden spotlight shine on him like the Utopian does. But I was a big fan of what Matt Lanter threw into his performance as George Hutchins, who's playing a family friend to the Utopian and Brainwave's family, the Samsons. And he's kind of like this rich, ne'er-do-well. He's very laissez-faire about responsibilities, and he's also creating a big front because there's obviously some darkness in his world as well. But I thought that he really nailed the period phrasing and the performance flourishes and stuff. I thought he was terrific in this. And we really just spent time with this George Hutchins character in the past, so we don't really get to see what happens to his superhero that he creates, the Skyfox character, which just alluded to throughout this first season. And so there are a lot of threads that are left as we wrap up these first 8 episodes, and the 8 episodes really kind of fly by. There's some 30-minute shows and there's some hour-long shows, and I think that every one of them has got some interesting little tidbits. And I was also a big fan of Elena Kampouris as Chloe Sampson, the daughter, who has become addicted to drugs, and she's super famous. She's a supermodel. Everybody knows who the Sampson family is. They're a superpowered family that the entire world celebrates. This Chloe Sampson has become a huge disappointment because she doesn't want these powers and doesn't want this responsibility or this fame, and she's burying herself in drugs and alcohol and stuff. And so we see the darkness that she's going through. There's a little bit of a cliched element there because we've seen a lot of these superhero origin stories and lots of, people grappling with newfound abilities and stuff. But you know what? I am a fan. I think Jupiter's Legacy is pretty damn cool. I enjoyed the first 4 episodes. I talked about that a couple of days ago, but I loved finishing the season. I definitely want Netflix to greenlight more seasons. I think the actors are up for it. I think the storytelling from the comic books and from Mark Millar's unbelievable talent. I mean, the guy has crafted some incredible superhero stories over the years. I think we can go for a nice long run with this show, and it will get better. I mean, that's what when you get to know these characters a little bit more over time, the stories get richer, the characters get richer, the show gets better. So yeah, I want more, and I did like Volume 1 of Jupiter's Legacy. I'm going to give it an 8 out of 10. And I've got just a few quick things to tell you about. Marvel dropped character posters for a lot of the actors that are going to be in Black Widow today, and they are very striking. Of course, we got Scarlett Johansson in there as Natasha Romanoff, looking like she'd kick your butt. Florence Pugh is in there as Yelena Belova, who's supposed to be kind of a sister-like character to Natasha Romanoff. David Harbour as the Red Guardian. Fantastic suit. Love this actor. Can't wait to see what he does with this role. And Rachel Weisz, who's playing Melina Vostokov, who's kind of like a mother-type figure to Black Widow. I really am a huge fan of Rachel Weisz. I can't wait to see her in this film. I can't wait for this movie in general. I'm super psyched for this. It's going to be hitting theaters and Disney Plus on July 9th. And let me know what you think. Are you excited about Black Widow? Are you going to go to the theaters, or are you going to get the sort of premium video on demand on Disney Plus? Let me know in the comments below. And I got some unsettling news about Resident Evil Village today. It looks like at best the game has taken some inspiration from Richard Rapphost's movie Frankenstein's Army, and at worst it may have outright lifted some of the monster designs right from the film. Twitter user Clone Corp and the director himself had some back and forth about these designs and these characters, which ultimately led the director Richard Rapphost to say, "Oh dude, this is worse than I thought. First I felt angry, then proud, but now I see this. I feel sad." There are no statements from Capcom about any of this. I definitely will follow up on this story, and hopefully Capcom responds in some way, because, creators all over the world are looking to these massive corporations to hire them and employ them, but they also want to protect some of their original concepts and ideas. And it's a messy world out there, and I know that this hits very close to home for a lot of concept artists and artists in general. So, I don't know. Hopefully there is some kind of resolution to this. And finally, the Gears of War developers at the Coalition have announced that they are upgrading to Unreal Engine 5, which will bring all kinds of new tech. They had this to say in a blog post: "As we look to the future of games, we're excited to start shifting our resources to next-gen development using Unreal Engine 5. Gears of War has always been at the front of Unreal Engine development as a breakout 720p title for Xbox 360 through last year's 120 frames per second multiplayer update for Xbox Series X and S. And we're excited to continue that tradition by developing on UE5 for multiple new projects in the coming years." They also mentioned that we shouldn't be expecting any major brand new releases from the team for a little while, but it is pretty exciting to know that one of the strongest development teams on Earth, they are just incredibly talented over there, has got some new horsepower to play with. I can't wait to see what kinds of crazy adventures they take us on next. All right, you guys, that's going to do it for the rundown today. Thank you so much for watching. I'll be back with a fresh episode for you tomorrow, so please come back for that. Thank you to all of our subscribers out there, and of course to our EPN members. You guys rock. We'll see you tomorrow, and until then, play forever.